little trivia about this poem. I did a lot of research about images in North African carpets, and a lot of the things that are listed here, the triangles and the frogs and lion's paws and that kind of thing, they're all meant to be sort of good luck or good fortune images. And because our government is considering raising taxes on ordinary people and lowering them for corporations and the wealthy, I wanted to read this poem called A Swarm of Flies. It's got a little epigraph from St. Bonaventure. The holy man told them, "You found nothing because you trust more in your flies than in God, for he called coins flies." And that's from the life of St. Francis. As if on carrion they gather, black and shining, their wings a blurred transparency. Each eye is like 100 eyes. Its facets shift and shiver in light, show the world in 100 variations, each slightly more sinister than the last. And huddled together in a deposit, they see hundreds of sinister selves, close by necessity, not by affection. In fact, they see the birefringence of a fish as only a mirror of their oil-slick rainbow shine, only worthy because of its resemblance to them. Flies believe that flies are all, creators of life, harbingers of death, your beginning and your end only possible through their intervention. Those are flies that leave your fingers as you pay, and flies that set your table with flatware and meat. You offer your children flies to eat, ladled onto their fly-bought plates. They cluster and hum in the small mouths and hands, spawning eggs like grains of rice that slide down throats. Within you, they grow. They become a life you cannot escape, a life enslaved. You labor in order to serve them, bringing home multitudes, hoarding flies whose buzz subsumes your calm, your peace, your marriage bed. Still, you never feel you have enough of them. But soon enough, this too will pass. And when you die, those will be flies that wait your eyes. I'm really fond of that Italian movie that basically sort of depicts St. Francis as a Marxist. I like that reading. So, the other thing about going to Assisi, of course, is that it's also the place where St. Clare is entombed. And I have a couple Clare poems to read, and then I'll wrap up. So, this one's called Francis and Clare in Light. If a man and a woman can be true friends, which, by the way, I think is in question these days, but, we'll do what we can with it. If a man and a woman can be true friends, what might we make of these two in late afternoon, sharing a mat laid on the forest floor and talking? What of the shaved head of the girl, hidden under a hood like so many rows of field stubble? What about the stone-roughened hands which had shorn her? Hands which gestured toward and all around her, helping the tongue in its search for enough poetry to express the light of the world. Though the words did not come complete, between this man and woman, an understanding began to burn. Were there sunflowers upon sunflowers turning their heads in all the fields of Umbria toward the two? Their shared love of the Lord forming another blinding sun. There's a story that when Francis and Clare were talking in the woods, some monks saw like a really bright light coming out of the woods, and it was just the energy between the two of them creating this light, like it was really sunny in the middle of the woods. If you go to the Basilica of St. Clare in Assisi, there's sort of this room, I think it's downstairs, and there's a big glass sort of case. It's like, 3 walls worth of glass case And they have a lot of items from St. Clair's life there. One of them is a glass casket full of blonde hair, which looks so much like a drag queen wig that it's almost impossible to believe that it's actually St. Clair's. But one of the things that does not look like it's sort of, bought in the 1950s and put in there is a stocking that she knitted for St. Francis. So I was thinking a lot about that, and I'm a knitter too. So I was thinking about how much work goes into something when you're knitting for someone, and how sort of what a beautiful testament it was that alongside of the stocking, there's a little casket of salve that she apparently made by hand to salve his wounds from the sort of stigmata that he received from the cross. So this is called the Relics of Francis and Clare. Lightwork, the spinning of yarn from wool. Shear the ruff from the lamb who followed him like a child. Card its fibers. Roll a thin thread between thumb and middle fingertip. A spindle's just a plaything made of olive wood, its dark and honey-color bands darkening more with the oils from your hands as you spin it wide into the air. You play. This play is what God creates all his children to do. In joy and longing, you make two stockings. You knit the wool you've spun fine. Your brother does not complain, but his pain radiates in sole and arch, wrists, the wound in his thin side. He dresses his punctures with homemade salve you kept in a casket, a secret. Years ago, he cut your hair. Now you twist a long strand into the fabric to clothe his bare feet. In his last days, you hope he will be comforted by thoughtful deeds. You know how he rejects soft things, kindness a luxury he won't permit himself, but from you he will accept it. Knit your stitches loose and even. Make each stitch a prayer. And I'm going to read one last poem. This is about the story of the Wolf of Gubbio, who St. Francis tamed after he had he'd been sort of terrorizing this town in Italy and eating people. So this is the Wolf of Gubbio. Imagine yourself an old wolf, lean and ragged, belly shrunken beneath a rib cage as bowed as a galleon's undercarriage, shoulders broader than your painful hips, and paws the size of a lion's. You terrify each living thing you encounter, voles and rats ducking into holes, rabbits humping their soft backs, propelled under bushes by back legs strong as their flesh is tender. A year of drought, the fields blown to dust, the wild animals fled to some place where they can scrounge a meal. To you, the world smells of the damp fur of groundhogs and deer, and you hunger. Your teeth ache with the need for slaughter. You catch the scent of human sweat and calculate how low you must crouch to jump for the throat and catch it, how snap your jaws to crush. And yet the man approaching you holds out his hand, a hand which might contain, it has before, some meat. He speaks, and though you do not understand his words, your fear recedes. He lays his palm on your head and you kneel, your hunger now a weakness inside you, but you feel like a dog might, calm, as if you belong to this man. Other humans have feared and beaten you, which raises your own hair, but he looks into your face, rubs his thumb against the ridge of your snout. He offers you some warm beef, blood running from his fingertips, and you eat, tearing the flesh, but careful not to bite him. When you have licked the last juice from his fingers, he stands to leave, and you follow into a village where many people stare to see you enter peacefully. He walks with you to every house, and at every house an offering to feed you, a bowl of milk, a sheep's liver, the chewy offal of a hog. No longer ravenous, you slowly eat your fill, then lie on your side as children rub your fur, making their high-pitched sounds. For the rest of your life, you never hunger, fed at any door you pass through, beloved and belonging. Would you call it a miracle if you knew that wherever you went, someone provided for you? Thank you. That's a good question, and it has a very long, complicated answer. But the short version of the answer is, I had a friend, I had a number of friends. There was a girl who was in my college dormitory who was named Liz, and she had red hair, and she had 14 siblings. And she was Catholic, and I was sort of having a bad night one night, and she came in and gave me a prayer card of the Virgin of Guadalupe. And then I subsequently, in my early 20s, went to Mexico, and then I went to Mexico again, and then I kept going to Mexico for years. And it ended up sort of becoming this very important part of my life. And being in Mexico and experiencing Catholicism there was really sort of one of the reasons that I converted. I also have a very close friend named Trent Pomplin, who is a theologian and a professor of religious studies at Loyola College in Baltimore. And he and I met each other when I was probably 18 or 19, and we talked for many years about it, and that helped. And then the other thing was that I found this extraordinary little Franciscan parish in Brooklyn, about 6 or 7 blocks from where I live. And it's really, it's a marvelous congregation, and the 2 priests who were there when I converted were just wonderful and are still very close friends of mine. So all of those things sort of together, that helped. But I think also, in my 20s, as they do, many things went very wrong. I was living in New York when September 11th happened, and it was sort of the middle of a big personal crisis, and I think really, ultimately, I just decided that I couldn't be in control of everything, so I was going to kind of try to let God help me out with that. So that's the other sort of reason. But I think when we sort of orient ourselves towards faith, it's because of questions. Always. So I'm sorry to say the questions have not stopped. But as Wendy was saying, my faith's not an easy faith. It's a fairly hard one. But it's very important to me. And so I think a lot of the prayer of St. Thomas, which is, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. So that's sort of the long version of the story, I guess. Are you Catholic? Ish? Cradle Catholic, right? Yeah. Well, the good news is you're still probably a Catholic, even if you feel that way, because pretty much most of the Catholics I know sort of wrestle with faith and doubt and sort of, how to balance those things in life. I think there's an ethos to being Catholic that stays with you, even if you don't end up staying in church all the time. Thanks for the question. Yes. Well, I think all Catholics are bad Catholics in their own minds, right? If you're a Catholic and you think you're a good Catholic, you have a problem. Yes. I think writing might be my only comfort zone, actually. And then when I realized after graduate school that it still made me uncomfortable, I just figured that I wasn't going to have a comfort zone, and that was okay. But I've been writing poetry since I was single digits. I started probably when I was in 2nd or 3rd grade, and I never quit. Although I have long hiatuses because I have a 4-year-old child, so sometimes I don't have 10 minutes to worry about something to myself, But writing is a place to sort of work out the trouble, I think. And the nice thing about writing this book was that it was all just full of models for me of how to work out the trouble. Like, that's kind of what the book is about. All of these people that I care about, I've written about them in the guise of historical saints because I feel like they're working it out, like they're sort of, they've got it figured out maybe a little bit better than the rest of us in certain ways. So yeah, I don't know if that totally answers your question, but my writing teacher says that if you want to be a writer, you just have to take 10 minutes every day and write. And the expressing yourself part will definitely come. So just try, just this week, just like for this week, 10 minutes a day. And then, next week you can renegotiate with yourself whether or not you're ready for it. But 10 minutes a day, like we do a lot of things for 10 minutes a day. I'm sure most people are on Facebook more than 10 minutes a day, or texting more than 10 minutes a day, or even going to the bathroom more than 10 minutes a day. So 10 minutes a day isn't so bad, But if you don't have a kid, you can find 10 minutes every day. My teacher had 7 kids, and she still found 10 minutes every day. But she actually is in the book because I think she is a saint. So anyway, but yeah, worth giving it a crack. Hi. I've been weirdly writing essays this year instead of poems for whatever reason. I had a piece that was published recently on this blog called Sick Pilgrim, which is part of Pathos. And the woman who was the editor, I wrote to her and I said, I'm sorry, there's not really anything Catholic in this piece, because we edited out the one thing that was Catholic. And she's like, it's okay, you don't have to put anything Catholic in it, So it was actually an essay about my little brother, and Ghostbusters and some other things. So yeah, I write about other stuff, but sort of the funny thing about writing anything religious is that a lot of publishers won't touch you. So I'm actually published with Paraclete, which is a religious press. So they didn't want it like a secular book from me, but I have some things that are more secular, yeah. So, well, they're explicitly a religious press. There's certain kinds of religious texts that I think get published pretty well. They're not generally the faithful kind. They're the ones that are talking more about doubt. I think I talk about doubt all the time, but I'm apparently too faithful, I think, to get published by a non-religious publisher. And then the other thing is, I think that there are a lot of religious traditions that either, like Muslims, have not been given a lot of space in American sort of discourse, and so Muslim writing gets published now, which is wonderful. I think Jewish writing always is very faithful, but also has like this great tradition of sort of this salty humor and things like that, and so that's something that people find approachable. But I think if you're like a really devout, faithful person, it's the perception that people who are not faithful are going to have a hard time relating to you. And honestly, I think it's kind of true. So, I have a very, maybe a very small, specific audience, but there's a lot of Catholics, so I'm not too worried. But I think it's very, it's very much sort of market dependent. So I think people are not interested in taking risks on stuff that they think will be alienating.